The Show Me Institute joins us. Good morning, Patrick.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. What's this Municipal Checkbook Project you guys got going on?
Yeah, so starting about middle of last year, we started asking cities for their checkbooks. And the project basically broke down into two phases. First, we wanted to find out how hard it was to actually get this information from cities, whether it was really expensive, whether they kind of gave us the runaround. So that was phase one. And then phase two was publishing that information online. And, you know, there are about 1,000 or so cities in the state, and we were able to actually basically finish up conversations with 150 of them, which kind of gives you an idea of how difficult this project has been so far. And about a third of those cities were happy to give us that information for free. About a third wanted $100 or less in that ballpark. And then the remaining third either didn't get back to us or wanted to charge us something outrageous. And outrageous looks like, in the case of Battlefield, $35,000 requested for us to get their checkbook. Whereas you look at other cities of comparable size like Salem or Vandalia, and they gave it to us for free. Jefferson City wanted to charge us $1,000. That's the capital of the state, and yet you have smaller cities that are more than happy to give us to us free. So it really doesn't matter really what the size of the city was. A lot of times I think it just mattered on what kind of the city culture, I guess, was in terms of their willingness to cooperate and allow the folks that pay their taxes to see what those taxes are being spent on. We think that if you can if you can spend taxpayer dollars, that you ought to be able to account for them, and if you can't, that's a problem.
What were you asking for specifically?
Yeah, we were asking for vendor information, so that included an address for the vendor because that check has to be sent someplace. We were asking for the date that the transaction was made. We were asking for if there was any memo information, so any description of what was actually being purchased with that money. And by and large, if you look at most accounting software, it's very easy to output that information, and yet we had some cities that were willing to do it and some cities that weren't willing to do it. We had one situation where they said that their computer had crashed and also that their paper records had been destroyed, so they had nothing available to us. I think that in this day and age, we should at least be able to assume that cities have electronic records, that they actually have an accounting software, and as they're collecting money, they can actually tell us where that money is going. I don't think it's that ambitious, and I think that it has been enlightening to see that some cities have some difficulty producing this information. The why is always an open question, but I think that taxpayers deserve to be able to see what's being spent, and I don't think that geography, where you happen to live, should dictate whether you have transparent government or not.
You mentioned that it didn't matter the size of the town. So it was. What about where it was? Was rural more apt to do it one way versus urban, or any breakdown with where the city was?
That's a great question, and I don't know that we really noticed a big difference in that. So Battlefield is a suburb of Springfield. It isn't necessarily rural, but if you look around the state, I don't think that Vandalia is particularly urban, but at the same time, they were able to produce it for free. So I don't know that there's really so much a rural or urban divide. I think it really does come down to, in a lot of respects, just the kind of city culture that is in a particular city about whether they want to actually cooperate with requests like this. So some cities already post this information online. I think St. Louis and Kansas City already do. I think Baldwin also does. But places like Manchester, they don't necessarily post it online. And it really doesn't have anything to do with city size. It really just has to do with what city practices currently are and what cities really want to make easily available. We think the checkbook information should be easily available. It should be online. It should be easy to access and easy to kind of navigate. And I think it's particularly if you go to our website, showmeinstitute.org, we have basically an app that will allow you to kind of drill into a lot of the checkbooks. You can see the vendors on a map and a lot of really interesting information. And for those that we couldn't put into the app, we have them actually just upload it to a Google Drive, and you can actually see about 55 different cities. You can go through their checkbooks. So we think that it is long overdue for cities to make this kind of a part of their regular, normal practice is to just post this stuff online.
Are you saying that if you live in the city of Manchester, here in St. Louis, in the county, if you live in Manchester, you can't figure out what their budget is? Where they spend their money?
Well, so budget is a little bit different than the particularities of what is actually spent. So I believe we actually have Manchester's budget now on our website, but they don't, and this is true of most cities, that most cities don't actually actively put this stuff online where you can go through basically a check register of what was spent in a given period of time. Now, a lot of city council members, they will have access to that pretty readily, and so a lot of times it really is just a matter of the city clerk giving to us what they're already giving to city council members, for instance.
Well, right. So hold on a second. Just so the budget is one thing. We're going to spend $100 on trash pickup, but you want to know how much actually was paid to the trash company to pick up the trash.
That is correct. So it's one thing to have like a financial statement that summarizes, okay, so this is what our revenues are going to be and this is what our expenses are going to be. It's another thing to say who you actually paid for a wide variety of very specific services. So maintenance for city vehicles, who is being paid for that and how much are they being paid for that. There are also opportunities here between cities because imagine, you're one city and you have a contract with some vendor, and that vendor is giving a discount to a city that's next door that you didn't know about.
Right.
You can actually, hypothetically, if this gets moving, you could compare what you're spending versus what another city is spending and say, hey, wait a minute, there's an opportunity for us to save money here. Why are we being overcharged versus our neighboring city? So there's a lot of upside here, and it's transparency that benefits both the public and I think those who are running the cities because, they can just point to the website and say, if you have any questions about what we're spending money on, take a look at the website. And frankly, if you think there's something amiss here, give us a heads up when we take a hard look and see if we can negotiate a better deal here. But I think it's long overdue, again, for cities to be very straightforward about what they're spending money on. I think this applies to the state as well. I think the state should have a similar opportunity for taxpayers to look at what they're spending on taxpayers' behalf. And I think ultimately even micro-taxing districts, so CIDs and included, I think at some point ought to be able to be to tell people very clearly what they're spending taxpayer money on.
It's shocking to me that 1/3 of the cities or the towns that you asked in the state of Missouri for their finances told you to pound salt. I mean, that's really kind of interesting. Was there anything that would deem it to be private, like there was some type of private payoff or some type of lawsuit that was kept confidential? It's pretty shocking to me that 1/3 of the cities just wouldn't give you that information.
Well, I don't believe that we received a single message that indicated that they couldn't share that information because of a pending lawsuit or of sensitive information that was within it. I think that a grand total of 0 cities made that defense.
Right.
I think that by and large, a lot of cities said that it would just be a lot of work, or they just didn't get back to us, so we don't really know why they said no. But for the cities that charged $35,000, or we weren't going to pay $35,000, but they said that they needed $35,000 or $25,000 or $10,000 or $7,000 for it. Our concern is that because the Sunshine Law allows for latitude in deciding how much it costs to get that information, that some cities may be using the cost as a disincentive for folks to pursue it. And so, and we're a research group, and of course, in the latter stages of our project, the St. Louis Business Journal also was helping and making similar requests. And between the two of us, we kind of had similar responses from a lot of these cities where they were going to charge thousands and thousands of dollars for this information. Wow. And I can only imagine that if you're just a regular citizen in a smaller or larger or middle-sized city, whatever the size of the city, and you're trying to get similar information and you don't know how to do it and you don't know how to work that system, that you may never get access to this. And so, like I said, I mean, we've only gone through, a fraction of the overall number of cities that are in this state, and it's been very difficult to get that information. So, I don't think that geography should dictate whether you have transparent government or not. Yeah. And I think that is something that needs to change in the state. The cities need to change how they operate, be more transparent about how they're spending taxpayer dollars, because, those taxpayer dollars aren't really the cities. They're ultimately taxpayers' money, and I hope that cities will be more open about it.
Patrick Ishmael, Director of Government Accountability at the Show Me Institute, showmeinstitute.org for more information. Good stuff, Patrick.